Hello Bernard, one more EuCNC, one more conference about 5G, many things, but we start listening to a lot of stuff also beyond 5G, so it's not just the 5G and the deployments. What are your impressions of this year's edition of EuCNC?
Okay, thank you very much, Luis, for this question. And first of all, I want to thank you personally for all the efforts that you have made to support the organization of this conference, which is greatly organized. So this is the impression that we all have. It was a great EuCNC. What we have seen from the conference is that I believe this year we have a little bit less than 600 registration, which is still on the very high side. So we are quite happy with the turn up, and it seems that the conference really attracts a lot of interest. Also from outside the European Union, I have seen that we have about 15% of participants which are not really from the traditional EU member state. We have even a large delegation from Korea and from Asia, so which is always good, and it shows that the subjects we are dealing with are of global interest, and this is something, of course, we can only welcome from a Commission perspective. Now, in terms of the content of the conference itself, I think, of course, we are seeing kind of an acceleration of 5G deployment these days, because the standards for the first version, release 15, just was completed. The first with the early drop last December, now with the standalone option June, just last week. So this is something which is, of course, speeding up the deployments. What we still take as a conclusion is that this is really the first step, and there is a lot of marketing behind this 5G story, which is reaching the market nowadays. And we believe it's a little bit like the ABC story, always best connected, that we heard in the mid-90s. We are still not yet there, but in the mid-90s we were saying, okay, we are going to get that very closely, very immediately. And what we tend to believe that there is still a long way to go before we can get the full promise of 5G. And we saw also a number of interesting considerations in the context of vertical deployments, meaning, of course, this is the European Union strategies to try to promote 5G in the context of vertical use cases. And this year was interesting to see that automotive is still a very important use case, as was already last year, and there was a lot of discussion on automotive and how we can push this technology into this use case. Now this year I got really impression that factories is also coming up as a very important use case, and we have seen an industrial association formed just around this subject. And this is something which is also interesting because from what we got from the various presentations, it seems that this use case is really pushing the KPIs of 5G even beyond the limits which have been specified by the ITU. So we will have to look into how to manage the possibility to provide these KPIs to the actual factory users. They are also coming with a little bit of a different type of environment this year. We can see this notion of private 5G networks, which was not yet there, and which will also, I believe, trigger a lot of interest from the research community. Now, when we look at beyond 5G, of course, this is something which is natural now that we are reaching, I wouldn't say an end of the cycle, but we are closer to the end than from the beginning, which means that, again, we have seen that some of the KPIs we have been talking about under 5G are not necessarily enough to cover a number of use cases. So this will already have to be taken into account in beyond 5G, whatever it's called. And there is also what we can see is that there is quite an emphasis on this cloud native story and how actually networks are going to be virtualized and how they are going to be implemented with virtualized technologies. And for instance, we see that things are moving ahead. For instance, 2 years ago in Athens, people were stating, for instance, you cannot virtualize real-time functionalities in a cloud run. Nowadays, people are saying the opposite things. We see some actors which are stating, no, you can do it, and so you have to do a little some tricks. So the technological landscape is evolving, and all this will have to be reflected in the beyond 5G perspective, on which we are working now with the hope that this will be one of the major themes under the next multi-annual financial framework. That means the implementation of the budget over the next period from 2021-2027. So that's our hope, that this will be a major theme for the next research period.
So let's check next year how these things will evolve, right?
Absolutely.
See you next year.
Absolutely.
In Valencia. Thank you, Bernard.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Luis.
It's okay?